every Saturday 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs and Co. Tonight we've got 17 days to go till the general election, but the deadline to register to vote is tonight. So are you voting? If not, tell me why. And if, as the polls suggest, the Labour Party win a landslide, it's been predicted by some that we're going to see a mass exodus of the wealthy. Do you agree with that? And what could we do to prevent it? And let's move away from politics, shall we? Let me ask you, do you think we need to reduce the drink drive limit in this country? And let's cross the pond. Joe Biden, is he losing his marbles or is he a victim of video manipulation? That's what the White House are claiming. What says you? Got all of that to come and more, but first let's cross live for the 6 o'clock news.
Michelle, thank you. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom today is that the Prime Minister faced questions from farmers on a visit to Devon this afternoon. Rishi Sunak argued that Nigel Farage wouldn't be able to deliver on any of his party's promises because, he said, a vote for Reform UK would only help Labour. He said it would be a privilege to understand the contribution farmers make to society, before then warning that 40,000 jobs could be lost as a result of Labour's plans.
Now, the contrast at this election is crystal clear. Because whilst we're going to do all those things for you, as David said, in the Labour manifesto, there were just 87 words about farming. No commitment to food production and food security. No commitment at all about the farming budget in the next Parliament. Forget about increasing it like we're going to do. They won't even say that they're going to protect it. Right? Like, that is the choice for you at this election, which is why it's so important that you come out and vote and you talk to your colleagues.
Rishi Sunak talking this afternoon. Well, more than 41,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel in small boats since Rishi Sunak promised to end the crisis in January last year. GB News can reveal that figure was passed today after more than 600 migrants made the crossing earlier on this morning amid improved weather conditions. The Prime Minister says it's further evidence as to why the Rwanda policy is necessary, while the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, highlighted his party's plan to take swift action.
I think the idea of processing claims as close to source as possible is a good idea. We also need to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade, because under this Tory government, they've lost control of the borders. And we will, set up a border security command, a new elite command, with new powers and resources to smash the gangs that are running the vile trade in the first place, because, as you rightly say, a record number have crossed the Channel this year already, and nobody should be making that journey across the Channel.
Keir Starmer. Now, Nigel Farage has said this afternoon that he'd abolish the television licence fee, which funds the BBC. The Reform UK leader was speaking during a town hall-style event this afternoon. It comes as the BBC said it would allow Reform to take part in an extra Question Time Leaders special after Mr Farage's team complained about being left out. And today is the last day to register to vote in the upcoming general election in July. That's about 2 weeks from now. A social media campaign is urging first-time voters to ensure they're on the electoral roll after a sharp drop-off in turnout among younger people. Those not yet registered have until midnight tonight to complete that process online. The Liberal Democrats promised today to spend £10 million a year to tackle the practice of sewage dumping by water companies. New quality inspectors would work as part of a newly created Clean Water Authority. Sir Ed Davey says it's crucial that Britain's water is cleaned up.
There's nowhere near enough sewage monitors. We call them sewage busters. We want to provide £10 million in our cost manifesto, so our new regulator, the Clean Water Authority, has the resources, because we do need a tough regulator, as we're proposing, with powers coming from other regulators, so we have a much stronger regulator, but they need the resources to do the job. And we've seen on the Conservatives cutting back the Environment Agency, where some of these monitors were, and we want to make sure the resources are there as well as the rules.
Now, a review has found that 4 police detectives who ran the first investigation into the murder of Stephen Lawrence shouldn't face criminal charges. It found there was insufficient evidence and no real prospect of a conviction. That means none of the 4 retired detectives is going to be charged. Stephen Lawrence was murdered in 1993 in a racist attack in South London. The original investigation was harshly criticised and failed to bring anyone to justice. And Sir Ian McKellen is said to be in good spirits after he fell off the stage during a performance in London's West End last night. The 85-year-old acting veteran was performing a fight scene in Player Kings at the Noel Card Theatre when he lost his footing and tumbled right off the stage. The theatre was evacuated while Sir Ian was quickly taken to hospital. Tomorrow's show has now been cancelled, though he's expected to return in time for Thursday's performance. We wish him well. Those are the latest news stories. Sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel. I've reunited them, the Conservative peer, Lord Sean Bailey, and the trade unionist and broadcaster, Paul Embry. Good evening to both of you. I'll let you into a little secret, everybody. They've come almost dressed identically. One of them's had to leave their jacket outside so that they don't match too much on the screen tonight. You're very trendy, aren't you, both of you?
Shouldn't be telling people the behind-the-scenes secrets.
Behind the
It's the
scenes.
same colour jacket, but his one was considerably more expensive than mine.
Here we go.
Because he's a Tory, so obviously
It was ironed. That was.
I mean,
the
look at him. He's so
bothered to
dapper.
have it ironed.
And we decided that he should keep his jacket on, and I'll have to wear this
Well,
ragged old shirt.
I'll let you decide who is the most stylish. Of course, it's about you guys at home as well. Get in touch with me tonight, all the usual ways. Email gbviews@gbnews.com. Go on the website gbnews.com/yoursay, or you can tweet or X me. And yes, I have seen your comments on my outfit tonight too. I'm just going to ignore them. I can't explain high fashion to each and every one of you. I don't have time, I'm afraid, because I'll tell you who's waiting for me. The political editor, Christopher Hope. He is on the Tory battle bus tonight. Well, he's outside of it by the looks of it. Hello, Christopher. What have we missed today on the campaign trail?
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Oh, we're excellent. We're excited.
That's right. I'll
tell you, we're really excited. We're really excited to see this bus because I happen to remember you promising my viewers you was going to take us around the back of the bus. I'm sure that was you making those promises.
Well, that's just going to be me tonight, Michelle. But I'll show you in a minute. I'm just going to finish on today. In North Devon, we've been with the Prime Minister. He's been with fishermen, talking about plans to ensure that the UK will hang on to its quotas if the Tories win the election. They won't really negotiate away the rights to fishing, as they say. Labour will. Labour would deny that, of course, but they want a closer deal with the European Union. They've also been warning with farmers that Labour would try and tax farming families who leave farms within a family and make them pay inheritance tax. The Tories wouldn't do that. The Tories say Labour would do that. There's also they've raised concerns about Sir Keir Starmer and would he actually try to re-evaluate homes and bring in new council tax bans. Today on a radio phone-in, Sir Keir Starmer wouldn't deny he wouldn't do it, and that's prompted an assertion from Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, that if you give 5 more years to the Tory party, they will not re-evaluate, to try and change council tax bans, which could lead, he says, to increase council tax for millions of families. Labour, they've got new plans to protect pubs and stop people, landlords selling pubs, try and make them easier for communities to take them over. And Liberal Democrats are announcing £10 million to spend on what they call sewage busters, inspectors to tackle some pollution. And just in the past hour, Michelle, there's been a big poll out, an MRP, a detailed seat-by-seat poll from Ipsos Mori. Again, Labour gets a huge majority, 453 seats to the Tories 115. What's fascinating is that 117 of those are too close to call, within a margin of 5%, and that means that 56 could be won by the Tories, 48 marginally by Labour. So the view is that there's all to play for in these final 2 weeks or so of the campaign. But just to highlight there, Cabinet Minister Penny Mordaunt, Grant Shapps, Gillian Keegan and other big names to lose their seats. And also Nigel Farage to win 3 for Reform UK, including Clacton.
Interesting stuff then. I'll get into that with my panel in just a second. Are you going to show us this bus then?
Are you sure? Oh, on the outside it says clear plan, bold action and secure future. That's the slogan. But this way, Paul, we'll go around this way. So I'll let you go at the front day, this way. So this is the way into Rishi Sunak's battle bus. It was formerly owned and run by Oxford United football team. They got promoted to the championship, so maybe that might be a good thing for Rishi Sunak, we don't know. But come inside.
Aboard, let's go.
So you go up this way. This is where the all aboard, okay.
Oh, we can
this
feel
is the way
the
Prime
power.
Minister
We can feel the power
down
through
here.
the screen.
Can you see it? Follow this
can.
way. Sorry, this is journalists working hard. We'll ignore these people. They've got privacy.
Hello,
and
everybody.
to the very end, you'll see. Can I show you? I'll show you the. There's a microwave here.
Oh yeah.
Microwave.
Yeah.
And there's some fridges down here.
Oh.
Some fridges.
You're like an air hostess,
and some
Christopher.
water. That was non-alcoholic. And there's a coffee machine. Here you are. And there's some nice bling on the ceiling. I'll show you. Oh, come this way, please.
If it all goes wrong,
where,
Christopher, you can be an estate agent in a future life. You're doing a very good detailed tour here. I like it.
Okay, we'll get someone on the back.
He's getting in trouble.
Oh, I think he's got stuck on
way, Paul,
on the back of a chair.
Go backwards. There we are.
Back we go.
Out. Keep going backwards. There we are.
Oh,
backwards.
you see, you don't get this on all the other channels. We get behind the scenes. Where are you taking us now? To the toilet? What's going on now?
This is the
we're
exit.
exiting. I thought it was taking us to the cars then.
I've entered, yeah. No. This is the back of the bus, Michelle, where we discussed earlier.
Oh, yes.
That's the back of the bus.
There
you have it. So it's kind of wrapped in this kind of blue film. It's wrapped in this blue film. And this will be ripped off when the election's finished. But for now, this is the campaign which all the journalists go on, and occasionally Rishi Sunak boards to tell us about his plans for another term as Prime Minister. But the polls suggest it'll be a Labour Prime Minister next time.
Oh, interesting stuff. I'll let you climb back on board. I don't want it to take off without you, Christopher. Thank you very much for that. He did just mention, hold on to it. Thank you very much. That's our political editor, Christopher Herp. He did just mention there, of course, Nigel Farage in the Clacton constituency. So rules are rules. I do have to mention all the other people that are standing. You've got Jervan Oswald Nopal from the Labour Party, Giles Watling from the Tory Party, Matthew Bensalem from the Lib Dems, Nigel Farage, Reform UK, Natasha Osben from the Green Party, Craig Jamieson from the Climate Party, Tony Mack from the, he's an independent, and Tassos Papanastu from the Heritage Party, and Andrew Pemberton from UKIP. So there you go. You see, that's what I like about GB News, because everyone talks about spin rooms this and battle rooms that and battle buses that, but actually, who knows what goes on in those places? It's nice, isn't it, to get behind the scenes. Look, we've got just a few hours to go until registrations for voting close. So 23:59 to be precise, everyone. How do you think we can galvanise more people to register to vote, Sean?
I think there's 3 things to say. Firstly, we've got to teach that voting is important.
Hang on. If you're wanting to do it, by the way, you can get your smartphones out now, open up your camera and take a picture of the QR code on the screen, and that will take you to the place where you need to be registering. Sorry, Sean.
as I was saying, the first thing is we've got to teach that voting is important. People died for this right. In 1918, they did the Representation of the People Act, and they let almost everybody vote. Women over 30 could vote along with everybody else. But people had to fight to even improve from that point. I mean, we had a very low turnout. I think it was in 2001, we had a really low turnout. The last turnout was 68% in 2019. Wasn't that bad? Let's see if we can beat that now. No, 2019 was 67.3. But the point I'm trying to make is if you want people to vote, talk about voting positively, stop talking about a low turnout, and let people know people died for this right.
Paul?
It strikes me that you need to give people an incentive to vote. And that means giving them a proper choice. And I think many of them feel that they don't have a proper choice because I think the main parties, the three main parties, have converged on that narrow strip in the centre so much that many people think, well, what's the point in voting? Turnout has gone down quite markedly since the 1980s, and that was when there was a real choice between the main political parties. I think ideologically they're as close now as they've been for a long time. The Corbyn period, obviously, not so much.
I disagree.
But I think ideologically it's true, Sean. If you look at all of the issues,
I'm not disagreeing.
Look at Europe.
Hold on.
Look
I'm not disagreeing.
Look at Europe. Look at privatisation. Look at the role of the state, whether the state should be an active or passive state. Look at NATO. Look at nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but
on all of those big issues in the 80s, the Labour Party...
He's saying hold on.
There's two things. I'm not disagreeing that there's a convergence, but that convergence has been driven by the people. Most people in this country would agree on NATO, etc., etc. But here's the thing. That's how democracy works. If people don't like what they have presented to them, do a Nigel Farage, start your own party and get involved.
Sean, the
point is, you can't complain that you have nothing to vote for. You're not voting for these political parties. You're voting for the existence of our nation. Get up and vote.
Sean, the proof that the status quo didn't work is 2016 and the Brexit referendum, because in that referendum, millions of people realised that they were not represented at the highest levels of our public life, and all of those people who felt that they were treated with disdain by the political establishment decided to fire a missile back at the political establishment, and that was a shock to the system of the establishment.
Not to my system.
It was to the people who run the system.
It was only a shock to people who wanted to stay.
It was driven, Sean, by the fact that actually most people don't agree with that consensus. No, it wasn't driven by that.
It was driven by the fact that people wanted to leave Europe. And again, democracy wanted to leave the EU. Let's be accurate. Democracy gave them the opportunity to vote and do it. And even if it wasn't just that, what they were disillusioned with was what they were presented with from Europe. The point is, democracy gave them an opportunity to get up and vote to make a change, which they did.
The 2016 referendum for most people wasn't just about the narrow question of do we want to leave the European Union. I think millions of people who voted leave, and some of them, frankly, ignored the question. It was about, do I want to hit back at a political elite and a political establishment in this country that for years has treated me and my people and my community with disrespect, has treated us like some sort of embarrassing elderly relative, has invited us to the sunlit uplands of cosmopolitan liberalism where we didn't particularly want to go, and regarded us as kind of nativist and bigoted if we didn't go there. And when you saw the Cameron Tory party and the Labour Party under various leaders all put in that case, all kind of within that narrow strip of liberal centrism, and millions of people felt completely unrepresented, that was proof at large that people they don't want that consensus and that they're not represented.
Let's be clear. I'm a person who voted to leave. I happen to agree with much of what you've just said, but that's not a reason not to vote. That's a reason to vote. That is a reason to get involved in politics. I got involved in politics because I thought it all came from the chattering classes down here in the southeast, and I wanted to fight some of that because I don't come from those classes, and I feel like my lot need as much representation as everybody else. And by my lot, I mean people have to work for a living. But the point being, get up and vote. Get involved. Yeah, I am now. But the point is, if you don't vote, you give those people power unchallenged. Get out of your house and vote. That's the system we have, and currently it's the least worst way of running a country.
No, I would like people to vote. Don't misunderstand me. I've always voted and I would always encourage other people to vote. But as I said at the top, you need to give people an incentive to vote. And I think millions of people just kind of feel if I go into the polling booth and I put an X on a bit of paper, let's be blunt, it's going to be two cheeks of the same backside, whoever gets in. Now, I don't actually believe that myself. I think there is a difference between the two parties, but not a radical difference in the way that there used to be in days gone by. I don't think it is a good thing.
It just
not when there's millions of people who don't feel represented. It's not a good thing.
It just two things. It just means, one, that most of us agree mostly on most things and we're heading in a general direction. And two, this is a safe country. There's many countries where if you didn't vote, you could die. Something could happen radically in the country. This country has been run well for hundreds of years. And unless we acknowledge that, people will feel that voting is irrelevant.
Do you think the country's being run well now? Because I think we are fast undeveloping.
I tell you why I believe that. I tell you why I believe that. If you compare Britain to almost any country in the world, we are doing very well and historically have done well as well. So the idea that we're some backwater, that we're led by donkeys, that the country destroyed simply isn't true. And if
do you think we're progressing or we're in decline?
I think our progression has slowed slightly. Hold on.
I think we're in a sharp decline. I think most people feel that.
But so has the rest of the world, and certainly the Western world. The Western world, its progression has slowed, and we are part of that. We are a very big part of that.
Well, there you go. We've got to 6:20, and Paul's not shouted tax the rich yet. There's still time. There's still time after the break, so I'll come on to that. I want to ask you whether or not we're going to see a mass exodus of the wealthy if the Labour Party gets in. I am going to be encouraging you all, though, as the programme progresses, to register to vote. If you've watched this programme before, you'll know that I am someone who has not turned out and voted in the past. You know what? Let's come together and let's change that. I will be bringing up that QR code as we progress, because you've got until 23:59 to do it. But after the break, the rich, are they going to leave or not?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 years ago, the small town of Evanston proudly became the first local government in the... It's just outside Chicago, by the way. The first local government in the US to start paying slavery reparations to its black citizens. But now the council is being sued in a federal court for exhibiting exactly the sort of prejudice it decries. By saying, well, basically, you know, the Hispanics, the white people, they are being discriminated against because they're not getting anything.
The people that were compensated were people that were adults between 1919 and 1969. Now, they lived under a time, in terms of education, in terms of the job market, they were literally barred from having certain jobs, going to certain healthcare clinics and going to certain schools. So that is a set of very distinct challenges that white people, Hispanic people, Asian people did not face. So that is precisely why they've been compensated in this way. And I think it's about £20,000 it works out to. I would have given him a lot more.
But you see, the thing is, history, we learn from history and we move on, and people evolve. And in order to reach a certain goal and a certain level of parity, which is what we all want to do, and through no way of levelling up, and this is a form of levelling up, by the way, it's nothing else, and it's divisive and it's patronising, I think it's absolutely disgusting. There were people in modern history who were discriminated against constantly, and I think it's so divisive to keep going back, to keep reiterating, to keep saying, oh, poor you. Between 1919 and 1969, you couldn't get a mortgage. Well, that was wrong. No one's saying it was right. But do we need to be compensated for that?
The legal challenge is saying that this is creating more divisions.
Yes.
The past is affecting the present, but not in a good way.
The People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
every Saturday 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside the Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey and the trade unionist and broadcaster Paul Embry. I'm a bit disorientated because he's normally in for a free pint on a Friday. So it's a bit disorientating for me to have you in the earlier on in the week. When I went to the break, I was saying, do you think that we're going to have a mass exodus of the wealthy? He chunted in my ear and said he hopes so. I'll come on to that topic in just a few minutes. Phoebe says that she's tuning in from Spain tonight. Thank you. We appreciate that. Lots of you appreciating the battle bus. Mark says he loved the fridge shot. So did I, you know. I think it's good to go behind the scenes and see what is going on. Lots of people telling people to get out and vote. Whoever you vote for, just get out and turn out to vote. If you just tuned in, the deadline tonight is 23:59, so pretty much just almost midnight tonight. I confess, you will know this if you're a regular viewer, I didn't vote for a very long time indeed. I can't really explain why. I just think it didn't really feel like it would make a difference. But you know what? This time around, I'm going to do it, everybody, and I implore you to do it alongside me. You can register to vote by scanning the QR code on the screen, and it'll send you to the website that you need to sign up to do so. And by the way, I've got to say to one of my viewers, you're a bit of a naughty boy, Phil, because you've just emailed a picture. You've just told me you volunteered to hand out leaflets with a picture of where you were leafleting, and I've just Googled the close name that you sent to me, and I got some rather unpleasant things come up on my Google screen. I think you were actually in Canal Close, but that you'd edited out the sea. Thank you very much for that. So let's get into the next topic then, shall we? Because apparently, if the polls are to be believed and we get a Labour Party majority, then some people are predicting that we're going to see a mass exodus of the wealthy. Apparently, the number of millionaires leaving Britain would double. Of course, this stems from things like the VAT on private schools and then the changes to the non-dom status. Let's look at Keir Starmer speaking out.
There are some tax rises, Sid, so we want to get rid of the non-dom status properly. That's where the super rich don't pay their tax in this country. We want to get rid of the private equity loophole, which again is used by those that are pretty wealthy to avoid paying the income side of tax. Okay. And we want a better windfall tax on oil and gas companies. But beyond that, Sid, none of our plans require a tax rise because our focus is on growth.
So I said earlier on, it's about 26 minutes past 6 now, and he still hasn't said about taxing the wealthy. I bet you've been itching to get that off your chest, haven't you? So do you reckon we're going to see an exodus of the so-called elite under the Labour Party?
No, they always threaten to go, but they never do they? And we shouldn't give in to what is effectively blackmail. I've said it on the show before, it's not acceptable for rich people, in my view, to hold the country to ransom. Either they believe in the democratic vote and they accept the government of the day and the policies that it introduces, or they don't. They're free to go, of course, but we should not indulge them and we should not be blackmailed by them. And governments will always attack trade unionists and say, oh, they're asking for 8%, 9% on their wages. We can't give in to them. They're holding the country to ransom. And, you know, the Tory press will be up in arms and saying, this is terrible, these militants, you know, holding a gun to our heads. Why does that never work the same way? Why is that attitude not the same?
Well, it's not our money.
When it's the rich,
it's not our money.
When it's the rich who are saying, do you know what? If the government doesn't do what I want in terms of low tax rates and low regulation and low environmental standards and all the rest of it, we're going to up sticks and we're going to go and we're going to take our plant and our machinery and our operations to an economy where we can make more money and where the government does what we want them to do.
Paul,
ultimately, it's a threat to democracy. When corporations and transnational, Sean, have got this much power, it undermines the ballot and we indulge them at our peril.
Hold on. You're not comparing like with like. That's people's private money.
No,
people's private
trade
money.
Unionists do a lot more productive and important work.
Versus money that normal people are going to have to take out of going to have to raise through taxes. It's slightly different. But look, I happen to agree that people should pay proper taxes. So the non-dom thing, I don't think it's that big a deal, right? Because it's a balance. And if Britain's a good place to live, raise your family, run a business, they should and will pay. I really do think that. And the government just has to figure out what the level is. And there's an opportunity cost there. And I personally think, you know, non-dom should pay a bit, whatever, keep going. And when they don't like it, a couple leave and most will stay. So it's not that big a deal. What's the real big deal is things like inheritance tax, because that hits your ordinary British-based, British-born, unable to leave taxpayer, and that's who we should be caring about, and that's who Labour are a real danger to. You know, things like inheritance tax in this country are hideously high, one of the highest in any OECD country, which is out of order because you've already paid tax on it. And this thing about private schools, if it doesn't work out, you're going to have more children in state schools without the money to follow them because those people have just left, and we won't raise the extra taxes that Stan was talking about. The bottom line
I have sympathy with you on that. You'll be surprised to hear me say.
I am very surprised. The bottom line is, as long as Britain is a good place to raise your family and raise your business, we can charge taxes. We can do that, but we mustn't do it to the detriment of our economy. And I worry that Keir Starmer has so many people he has to now stand up. He's going to come for your money, not non-doms. They can leave, you can't.
I think, right, I had a bit of time on my hands today, so I did a little bit of maths. I did go for a lie down afterwards, I will confess, but I was looking at some figures, right? So if you look at the year 22 to 23, the public spending per person in the UK was £12,549, right? So there or thereabouts, £13,000 per person. And then I was working out what tax people pay on which different incomes, right? So if you earn £30,000 a year, you're going to be paying about £5,000 there or thereabouts in income tax and national insurance, right? If you earn £125,000, so 4 times the earnings, you're going to pay 10 times the tax. You'll pay nearly £50,000 in tax. And I was looking, the top 1% of earners pay 30% of all income tax. The top 10% of earners pay 60% of all income tax. So you've got a very small pool of people here subsidising a lot of the well, actually, in the top 1%, I think you've got something like 300,000 people. So we really need to be quite careful. Bearing in mind what I'm saying to you is, if you've got a public spend of £12,000, it'll probably be a bit more now. Someone on 30 grand is paying 5,000. You need a lot of those high earners to be subsidising that public spending.
There is, and I've said it before, Michelle, there's hideous wealth and income inequality in this country. The 5 richest families have more wealth than the poorest 20% of the population. Now, I don't accept that there isn't money. The problem is, as is the case in many capitalist societies, too often the money is concentrated and the power by association is concentrated.
It's no different in a socialist.
And actually, when you look at our tax rates, our tax in Europe, their marginal tax rates are invariably higher than ours, and we keep banging on in this country about the tax burden. Now, I don't believe in punitive levels of taxation. Don't misunderstand
me. But you have to achieve what you're getting at.
We talk about the tax burden. Actually, historically, by our standards, it's a bit higher than normal. But compared to a lot of European countries, it's not. And if you look at some of those European countries, and in terms of the investment in public services and the quality of those public services and the cohesion of the society, some of them are frankly more developed than ours. If you want decent public services and a compassionate society, you've got to have a fair and progressive tax system. The wider the gap between rich and poor, the greater the inequalities in terms of people's income and people's wealth, the economic inequalities, and actually the social inequalities as well, because what you end up with is an underclass of people, while the richest, get ever richer, and the trickle-down theory, it's called, isn't it? If we allow the rich to get richer, the people at the bottom will also get richer. Actually, it doesn't
there's
work.
A limit.
It's been proven not to work.
So let's be clear. In the state of this country, trickle-down did work. There's a limit to it. Let's be clear. There's absolutely a limit.
You
but the size, I tell you, our economy has grown because of the number of rich people and companies we have in it, and we've spent progressively more on public services. Hold on. If we haven't spent enough, is a whole other argument. But you have to grow the size of the pie before you can spend that pie. That's just just a fact. And when you talk about other countries doing better than us in Europe with how they do taxes and stuff, are you comparing like with like? We have a different population makeup. For instance, we have a very elderly population, so we have costs that other people don't. You know, we have many more people come from abroad and live and stay here than comparable nations in different countries in Europe. So it's not a direct comparison. I go back to something that Michel said. It's important to understand that those very high earners do shoulder some of the burden. Maybe they could shoulder more, but it's not right to speak about them as greedy rich
how much
people
more should
when
they
they're doing
shoulder?
the work.
I've just said that the top 1% of earners are paying 30% of the income tax. I mean, how much more? When you start getting into decent sums of money, you get no personal allowance, so you don't get a penny tax-free. The amount that you can put into your pension with tax allowances and all the rest of it, that massively reduces. You've got a 45% tax rate. Again, you've got a period, I think it's between about 125 or whatever it is, between 100 and 125 or whatever. You have an effective tax rate of about 60% for a portion of that money. I mean, how much more should people be shouldering? And don't forget, of course, those high earners, what they take out of the state will be minimal compared to other people. They will privately educate their children, they will use private health, so they're not really drawing down from the state.
Let me be clear. I'm somewhere between you and Paul. I do think those high earners can sustain a little bit more, but you can't just flease them because when they go,
Tell me how much more?
Just a smidgen. Just a
what?
smidgen.
Tell me.
Just a smidgen. Let me tell you where I personally.
Tell me what your smidgen
I'll tell you where you do it. Right, you do it on things like VAT. Rich people buy lots of stuff, so they pay VAT. Poor people buy less stuff, pay less VAT. You don't put VAT on things that people need: baby food, shoes, those kind of things. Travel, but Ferraris. Some VAT, please, and you get the money back.
Financial services, for some reason, has a VAT exemption, which I find impossible.
But what you're forgetting is the amount of tax those services pay and the amount of high-level salaries they pay, who then pay tax. So you have to be careful about punishing industries.
There's still no justification, really, I think, for financial services saying it should be VAT exempt, because more often than not, those services are used by the richer people, the wealthiest sectors of society, you know,
but that's a way all of getting money out of them.
And I just don't see why, especially, I mean, we go back to the debate about private schools. If you're charging VAT on lots of other things, including private schools, for example, it seems to me to be entirely reasonable to say that financial services should fall into such a bracket as well, and would bring in an awful lot of money.
I just challenge you slightly. Those financial services is one of the linchpins of our economy, and it is in a world competitive environment. You hobble that, your NHS suffers, your police suffers. So you need to be very careful about the changes you make there.
Actually, I think the fact that we've invested so much faith in financial services and ignored and neglected the real economy over so many years, our manufacturing sector, our industrial base, because we're more concerned about the demands of financial services, has been a large part of the problems we've suffered, not the solution.
We could do more in real business. I do accept that.
What do you think to it at home? Because you will have very divided opinions. What I would like to see is, bearing in mind how much of the wealthy, the tax the wealthy are paying, I would like the conversation of actually how do we get more wealthy people in this country to be contributing even more tax. Your thoughts on all of that? Let's talk drink driving after the break. Is it time to revise our limits down or not? See you in 2.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's staying fairly dry and fine as we head into Wednesday. Sunny spells for many of us, another dry day on the cards, however. Across the far northwest, there are weather fronts approaching, but for many of us, we've got high pressure dominating across the UK, and that's bringing all that dry and fine weather. Through this evening, though, there's a risk of some heavy showers still continuing for some northern areas of England, but elsewhere, a dry and clear night to come for many of us. We will see the clearest skies across the far northwest of Scotland. Northern Ireland too, where temperatures could dip down into the low single figures, but for most of us to start the day will be at around 10 or 11 degrees. A little bit fresher tomorrow morning than this morning, but still plenty of sunshine around. Let's take a closer look at how things look first thing tomorrow. And actually, where it's been quite cloudy across the far north of Scotland lately, it's going to be a much brighter start tomorrow despite the chillier feel, and that sunshine will be spread quite widely across the UK into Northern Ireland, Northern areas of England, North Wales. There'll be some cloud around here and there, but generally Wednesday's going to be a fairly fine day. And actually, an onshore breeze across the far southeast could bring a slightly fresher feel here. But for most of us, plenty of sunshine to come through tomorrow. Sunny spells into the afternoon. Cloud will bubble up a little bit. That may allow the odd shower to break out here and there, perhaps across the southwest, but I think you'd be pretty unlucky to get caught out in a shower. However, a different story for the far northwest of Scotland, into the Western Isles and the Highlands, where a weather front is approaching. Now in the sunshine, highs of around 23 degrees to come in the southeast, but widely into the high teens for many of us. Thursday's looking like another dry and bright day for the bulk of the UK. Temperatures climbing towards 24, possibly 25 degrees on Thursday, but weather fronts never too far away from the far northwest, which means it will be a little bit cloudier with a risk of rain here. But actually, the further south and east you are, the more likely you are to see more in the way of sunshine and temperatures climbing. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems continue in Tyne and Wear for the A1. The western bypass remains closed southbound from the concert turnoff down to the Swalwell junction, just west of Gateshead. Those emergency repair works are still underway after a lorry caught fire. West Yorkshire, the A656 remains closed through Micklefield at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision, which continues to be investigated. And the M61 is blocked southbound in Greater Manchester currently. Ford of Free between Farnworth and Kersley Spur at the scene of a crash. Really still on the Surrey stretch of the M25 clockwise, still after an earlier accident just before Godstone in the roadworks, and anti-clockwise through Kent after a car broke down just before the Darren interchange. M27 westbound slow through Hampshire after an earlier crash from the M275 heading away from Portsmouth, and southeastern trains are suspended out of Dorset from Gillingham to Sittingbourne due to an ongoing investigation. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Grand.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Sean Bailey and Paul Embry remain alongside me. Dave says, with Paul's dark attitude about our country, it's no wonder that we are going downhill. Tony says, can you tell Paul that being wealthy doesn't make you a bad person and it is not a crime? He says, however, being jealous is one of the most unattractive traits of human behaviour. There you go, Tony. I told him. I can tell you now that there'll be lots of other people that actually completely agree with Paul and think that actually the wealthy should be paying even more. Feel free to get in touch and let me know all of your thoughts. But I want to talk to you about drink driving. Did you know that the limit is one of the highest in this country across the rest of Europe? Now, the BMA have called for our drink drive limit to be reduced to the equivalent of a small glass of wine or beer. I've got to confess, I do get confused about what the drink drive limit is. So if I'm going to have a wine, are you allowed to... Is it a medium one? Can you have a large one? So then I think it's always better to kind of be on the safe side, really, and just probably not have anything. I think there's a lot of confusion about the limits. Is it better to just scrap it and just say you can't drink anything at all?
Look, I have to confess, I don't drink, so I haven't got a dog in this fight. But I'd have to say, if there's a level of confusion, of course, is a limit the same for you and another woman or another man? It's not the same because your body reacts differently. It's probably just safer to scrap it. Most people I know, if they're going to drink, they simply will not drive. So for them, it's not even a choice. They think, I'm going to have a drink, I'll leave the car at home, or I'll get my partner to drive. So it's not a big deal. I probably, having thought about this, if our level of road accidents is high, then they should just scrap it altogether. No drinking and driving together. It'd be simpler to administer.
So the limit at the moment is 80 mg of alcohol per 100 mils of blood. And they want it reduced to 50 mg of alcohol per 100 mils of blood. But, I mean, this is why I think it's quite confusing, because it's kind of... You've got wines that are different strengths, you've got beers that are different strengths, and like was just saying then, everything affects people differently. And then I always think as well, if you've not eaten, and then you have a bit of wine on an empty stomach, that seems to go a little bit differently. So what do you reckon? Get rid of it all? Scrap it?
I think the best thing is just not to drink if you know you're going to be driving. That seems to be the most sensible thing.
But what should we do with the law? Because the BMA they're going to lobby.
I would support the reduction. I think it's a no-brainer. We haven't reduced the limit, I think I'm correct in saying, since 1967, and actually most, if not all, European countries have a lower limit than us. And I was checking the figures. I think last year, or perhaps the year before, there were 220 deaths on the road caused by drink drivers. Now, that suggests to me that it's still an issue. And I think, I mean, I'm a firefighter. I've been, in my career, I've been to road traffic collisions where people have been injured as a result of drink drivers. I've seen the effect that can have. And when you see it, you understand the importance of it, because it does impair people's reflexes, people's concentration. And I really don't think there's any excuse in this day and age for people having a drink, even getting what they think might be near to the limit.
Can I ask a question? You see, as a firefighter, have you been to any road accidents that have officially been designated by the use of drugs, so marijuana, cocaine, whatever? Is that a thing? Does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if people have got particular drugs in their system and they're tested afterwards, then people can be convicted for driving under the influence of drugs as much as they can be convicted of driving under the influence of drink. So yeah, I mean, it seems to me, as I say, it seems to me a no-brainer that with that number of deaths per year.
Well, yeah, 200 a year die in drink driving.
On families.
Yeah, and 1,600 people seriously injured a year, apparently, related to drink driving. But people at home, Paul, they're really divided, because Steve says, here we go, yet another attack on motorists, banging on now about reducing the alcohol limit. That's what he's saying. He was saying it's just perhaps if you're just on or just below the legal limit, he thinks it's fine. But David says absolutely the drink drive limit should be completely zero. John says he's in Scotland and apparently they've changed it there and they've seen no difference since they've dropped it. That's what he says. He's also said that actually the problem is that the police don't seem to respond quickly enough when anyone does report drink driving. Someone who works with me today told me a story about she went to a wedding recently, and when they were letting the guests leave, they were breathalyzing the guests. I mean, what do you think to that? Is that a little bit...
for their own good, though, isn't it? I think the strongest...
Is that a little bit of an overreaction?
He was doing that.
It's family.
He was doing that
No, the hotel staff. I mean, I've got to say, I wasn't at this wedding. It's a story that she told me.
It's family. Look, the strongest argument, actually, Michelle, is yours. It's hard to decide if you're over or near or around the limit.
Yeah, don't take the chance.
Yeah, so don't take the chance. So that's probably the strongest reason to do it.
There you go. What do you think to that? I can tell you there's a lot of people saying just get the limit to absolutely zero. After the break, I want to talk to you about Joe Biden. Is he losing his marbles, or are we, the public, being manipulated by people editing videos to present that image? Your thoughts?
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
What about the elections? Because it seems that the King and everything is moving because of it, and we've got a lot of royal engagements and things that happen at this time.
Yes, well, it means that he has to take more time and be at home. He can't go to all the things he wants to do. He's been doing 5 a day, which is probably made Camilla a bit cross. But what they still hope is that they can get the Japanese Emperor and Empress over. That's in July. That they can go to France for the 80th anniversary of the fighting. And he will be able to do 1 or 2 things, and Ascot he's very keen to do. Now, those aren't things that are political in any way. Just want to talk about Harry and Charles's argument, where Harry said he didn't want to stay, he wanted to go to a hotel. And it's come out now that actually King Charles is believed that he was offered St James's, and Princess Anne stays there and Beatrice stays there.
And this was for when Harry came over for his 10th
yeah,
anniversary
exactly. And the policemen are wandering around with guns, and there's no chance of actually there being any problem there. So the fact that he said that it wasn't safe for him was not actually a very sensible thing to say, I don't think.
Well, he went to Nigeria, and that is, in the world ranking, it's ranked as quite a dangerous place.
Yes, one of the dangerous places in the world. But now Harry and Meghan have been invited to go to Ghana.
Oh, God. Well, it's interesting because my parents are from Ghana. I have Ghanaian heritage, and I'm thinking she'll probably then claim there's a percentage that she's Ghanaian as well. I'll be like, hang on a minute, you were Maltese, you're also Nigerian,
and
now
German,
you're going to say you're Ghanaian and German.
Yeah.
Come on. Thank you very much.
Squeeze it in.
Yeah, let's get them all in. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me. Paul Embry and Sean Bailey remain. Phoebe says, you've just been talking about taxing the rich. Please, can you ask someone on your panel, who are the rich? Very quickly, because I want to talk about Joe Biden.
Very quickly, people like Michelle Dewberry.
Shut up, Phoebe. Like, do you know, the top 1%, I think that those earnings are about £180,000 when I last looked. It might be slightly more in this day and age, but actually, to many people, actually, the rich is just someone that earns a little bit more than them. You tell me what you regard as the rich. I'm going to give him a kick. Look, let's talk Joe Biden. Do you think he's losing his marbles? Because apparently, we're just being manipulated by people editing video. Let's look at some of the most recent footage then, shall we? I mean, look, you will have seen some of these clips. I'll describe it if you're listening on the radio. You've got some kind of performance. Everyone's jigging around. And Joe Biden, without being too cruel, looks very confused. And I think I'm putting that quite gently there. Look, you've got this one at the D-Day service, and he seems to be looking for a chair to sit on. That's despite the fact that everyone is standing on the stage and there is not a chair. You've got this one where you've got Joe Biden and then you've got Obama. He looks a little bit like your lost kind of granddad, really, and then Obama takes him by the hand and leads him off the stage. In a second, I'm going to show you a clip of what the press secretary actually says in response to a couple of those clips. But here you go again, you've got Biden. I mean, I don't really know where he's looking. It seems to be the complete different direction to everybody else. And he's just kind of wandering off. What do you think's going on here, Paul?
I think some of the clips have been manipulated, actually. When you see them in their full context, they're not quite as they have been presented by Biden's opponents. But look, at the same time, he is infirm and he is frail and he is doddery, let's be blunt about it. And I think he does have memory issues. And so all of those things can be true. His opponents can be, you know, quite Machiavellian about what they're doing and are. But at the same time, I don't think he's fit to sustain another 5 years of the presidency. That's sad, but I think it's a physical reality for him.
Well, the press secretary for the White House, she has been speaking out. Let's look.
Obama's office put out a statement, and he said this did not happen in the sense of what people were saying they were seeing, right? Or what was being falsely reported that they were seeing. Let's not forget, President Obama, President Biden have a relationship. They are friends. They're like family to each other. And I think that's what you saw.
I don't doubt they're like friends and family, but that's kind of the point. He's getting to the stage, isn't he, where he is like the older kind of member of the family and you're having to shepherd him along. And there's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with ageing. But then there is a question about whether or not that's the most suitable person for that office.
I think there's three things to answer. Videos are not being doctored. He has been at events. People at the events have reported that. We see his wife regularly come to his rescue. There does seem to be something wrong. The only reason this is important is because this is a man who has the well-being of 320 million Americans and arguably 7 billion people, you know, sort of at his fingertips. And his ability to recall, to parlay with people is very important. He could say something and crash a market, say something and cause an international incident. So I do think how firm he is, or infirm he is a very important thing. And if people are making false accusations against him, his supporters and the White House could easily refute that with the actual evidence. And unless they do that, this feels like the White House making an excuse.
And surely you would think it's for his family and friends, his loved ones, his political allies, to say to him, look, Joe, your time is probably up. Because, I mean, it's arguably the most demanding job in the world anyway. Even for a young, fit man. And I think it would have been quite a good time after one term for him to have bowed out fairly gracefully, instead of going through the next 5 years, possibly, which I think then you're just going to then see a stream of what we've just watched. And it's going to undermine his presidency.
There's two ways to look at it. So his political friends around him could be thinking, if he stays, this is going to be a problem for us. We're going to be weak. They might be speaking to him in the background, but then there might be another group of friends who are saying him being infirm effectively leaves us in charge, and we like it that way. So it'd be interesting to see how the Democrats deal with him.
I think that's a very insightful point. I think that could well be their thinking.
I think it's just very uncomfortable to watch. It just makes me feel quite uncomfortable. Graham says, please, what confused logic? Stopping these drink driving limited basically means that changing the limit to 0 would make no difference on those people that are already breaking the law. I just want to get that QR code up again. The cut-off is just before midnight tonight. Come on, guys. Let's come together and register to vote. I'm going to do it this year. I confess I have not in the past. But you know what? We can't really complain about stuff if we don't get involved, can we? So I'm going to be doing that. I recommend that all of you make sure that you are registered to vote as well. However you vote, it's up to you, isn't it, quite frankly? Lots of you have enjoyed the conversation tonight. Ella, she says that you're rich if you have £2,000 a week after bills, disposable income. Very precise, I like that. Thanks, gents. Thank you at home, don't go anywhere. Camilla is up next. Night-night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's staying fairly dry and fine as we head into Wednesday. Sunny spells for many of us, another dry day on the cards, however. Across the far northwest, there are weather fronts approaching, but for many of us, we've got high pressure dominating across the UK, and that's bringing all that dry and fine weather. Through this evening, though, there's a risk of some heavy showers still continuing for some northern areas of England, but elsewhere, a dry and clear night to come for many of us. We will see the clearest skies across the far northwest of Scotland. Northern Ireland too, where temperatures could dip down into the low single figures, but for most of us to start the day will be at around 10 or 11 degrees. A little bit fresher tomorrow morning than this morning, but still plenty of sunshine around. Let's take a closer look at how things look first thing tomorrow. And actually, where it's been quite cloudy across the far north of Scotland lately, it's going to be a much brighter start tomorrow despite the chillier feel, and that sunshine will be spread quite widely across the UK into Northern Ireland, northern areas of England, North Wales. There'll be some cloud around here and there, but generally Wednesday is going to be a fairly fine day. And actually, an onshore breeze across the far southeast could bring a slightly fresher feel here. But for most of us, plenty of sunshine to come through tomorrow. Sunny spells into the afternoon. Cloud will bubble up a little bit. That may allow the odd shower to break out here and there, perhaps across the southwest, but I think you'd be pretty unlucky to get caught out in a shower. However, a different story for the far northwest of Scotland, into the Western Isles and the Highlands, where a weather front is approaching. Now in the sunshine, highs of around 23 degrees to come in the southeast, but widely into the high teens for many of us. Thursday's looking like another dry and bright day for the bulk of the UK. Temperatures climbing towards 24, possibly 25 degrees on Thursday, but weather fronts never too far away from the far northwest, which means it will be a little bit cloudier with a risk of rain here. But actually, the further south and east you are, the more likely you are to see more in the way of sunshine and temperatures climbing. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems continue up in Tyne and Wear for the A1. The southbound carriageway of the Western Bypass remains closed from the concert turn-off down to the Swalwell Junction west of Gateshead. Those emergency repair works are underway after a lorry caught fire. Really slowed down the M18 through South Yorkshire towards the M1 after a car broke down blocking off the left lane. Lancashire, the A56 remains shut from Haslington up to the Rising Bridge roundabout at Rosendale following an accident causing queues back onto the M66. And in West London, the Uxbridge Road at Southall's blocked by a collision. Still really slow on the Kent stretch of the M25 anti-clockwise after a car broke down just before the Darren interchange, causing queues towards the Dartford tunnels. And Greater Anglia trains are suspended from Beccles to Lowestoft in Suffolk because of problems with the signals. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, GBNews.com.
There's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good evening and welcome to Vote 2024, The People Decide with me, Camilla Tominey. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be covering Nigel Farage's criticism of a vetting company it says hasn't done its job on reform candidates because it's in bed with the Tories. We're also going to be discussing whether Boris Johnson should return to the campaign trail, a help or a hindrance to Rishi Sunak. And we've got an exclusive GB News documentary about left-wing extremism. We'll also debate whether the drink drive limit is right. Do you think it should come down? Don't forget to get in touch by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay. First, though, here's the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Camilla, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that the Prime Minister faced questions from farmers today on a visit to Devon. Rishi Sunak argued that Nigel Farage wouldn't be able to deliver on any of Reform's promises because he said a vote for Reform would only help Labour. He said, though, it had been a privilege to understand the contribution farmers made to society before going on to warn that 40,000 jobs could be lost as a result of Labour's manifesto.
Now, the contrast at this election is crystal clear. Because whilst we're going to do all those things for you, as David said, in the Labour manifesto there were just 87 words about farming. No commitment to food production and food security. No commitment at all about the farming budget in the next Parliament. Forget about increasing it like we're going to do, they won't even say that they're going to protect it. Right? Like, that is the choice for you at this election, which is why it's so important that you come out and vote and you talk to your colleagues.
Rishi Sunak. Meanwhile, an election debate over immigration is underway tonight, with 7 representatives from the main political parties taking part on Channel 4 television. It comes as more than 41,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel in small boats since Rishi Sunak promised to end the crisis in January last year. GB News can reveal that figure was passed today after more than 600 migrants made the crossing earlier on this morning amid improved weather conditions. The Prime Minister says it's further evidence as to why the Rwanda policy is needed. The Labour leader, though, Sir Keir Starmer, highlighted his party's plan to take swift action on the issue. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage says he'd abolish the licence fee which funds the BBC. The Reform UK leader was speaking during a town hall-style event this afternoon. And it comes as the BBC said it would allow Reform to take part in an extra Question Time Leaders special after Mr Farage's team complained about being left out. Labour says it'll bring face-to-face banking back to the high streets with 350 new hubs in towns and villages. It would see staff from several banks sharing the same space, helping fill gaps left by branch closures. Consumer Group Which says more than 6,000 branches have closed since 2015. And also electioneering today, the Lib Dems have been promising to spend